Hi everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Frankly Finance. So Lexi is off on a cruise, so she's not here today. So we have the absolute pleasure of Thabojan being here. So he's one of the founders. You would have seen potentially some other stuff that he's done on the platform. You might be familiar with him, but I'll hand it over so that he could say a little bit about, if you want to tell us about yourself, your career and what you do.
Yeah, look, I don't want to talk about myself too much, Gemma, but thanks for having me on. It's awesome to be here and join. I'm hoping that I can do half as good a job as Lexi has done. But my background, financial advisor for 20 years, and just love helping people with money stuff. I think that's all you need in terms of my background. You did mention that the founder of Finito, and that is important. The reason I started with Finito was because I think that we don't help enough people out there. There's not enough advisors, and there's just so much we can help people with as financial professionals, getting great people like yourself and Lexi on to have a big impact in people's lives. That's why Finito exists. So yeah, super pumped to be here and have a chat about retirement.
Yeah, one of my favorite topics, absolutely. So would you say that you have like a niche in like where you give financial advice, where your career's kind of sat, or do you do a bit of everything?
Yeah, I guess having done it for 20 years, I've been super lucky that I've had some awesome mentors and people that have helped me over the years. Learned from some of the best, I reckon, to help shape how I've done advice and what I think about it. Also been on the journey from working with lots of different types of people, different demographics, different complexity, different ages. And so yeah, helped lots of people. But in my advice business, the thing that we really focus on is impacting people's lives. And the one of the things in our business is that we're really, really strict about wanting to have the biggest impact we can in the world. But what that means is we only want to work with people where we're talking about stuff that's bigger than money. I think as advisors, we tend to focus too much on the money stuff, and we run the risk of not talking about the non-money stuff. So what's important in your life? What are your values? What is your purpose? With every single client, we insist on having those conversations. Otherwise, we don't want to work with them. And the reason for that is because we know that if we're having those conversations, we can elevate how much impact we can have for them, how much value we can add for them. So if anything, that is our niche, that we will only take on clients and work at that level. Of course, that leads into all the complex work and the things that need to be executed from a tax perspective and all the other stuff. But, ultimately that's how we do things.
Yeah, and that business vision really aligns with kind of how Lexi and I came into money coaching and things as well, because we really wanted to focus on that, the passion, the drive, the values, not just the money, but the actual lifestyle. So we love that your firm focuses on that too. Okay, cool. All right, well, let's get into retirement. So I prepared some questions that I wanted to ask you, and I thought we could talk around them. But of course, if there's anything that you think's really, really important, and I'll try not to get too much into strategy. So when I was a financial advisor, my favorite niche area was retirement planning, and that's usually what I did. So anytime somebody like mentions super or whatever, I'm like, oh my God, I love this. Yeah, so I'm really, really passionate about that area. But so from your experience, what would you say are the main concerns that people have, the worries, what's keeping them up at night when they're looking at retiring, but also when they've actually already retired? What would you say the main concerns that you see are pretty common?
Yeah, good question. I think it's quite complicated. The psychology around it is really, really interesting. I've done a lot of research and spoken to, again, everything I know comes from people that are much smarter than me. So spoken to people who again have studied this to death, retirement psychologists. There's a guy called Barry LaValle that I know very well. He talks about the psychology of retiring, and that retirement isn't one phase. We think that retirement is one phase of life, but there's actually multiple. He talks about 5, 6, 7 different phases that people go through in retirement. And when you think about it, it makes sense. And your brains change, your life changes, your relationships change, your families change. So it makes total sense. But most people don't think about it that way. To answer your question, people that are already retired, the key thing that they probably worry about is, am I going to have enough? When am I going to run out of money? If they've got tons of money, then sometimes they think about, what am I going to do with it and where's it going to go?
Yeah.
But I'd probably say what's more common is, am I going to have enough? How do I make sure I've got enough? I mean, I see people that have got so much money, but they still think about things like, should I do this? Can I afford to do that? That's how a lot of people are wired. In terms of moving into retirement, again, I think it's just a what do I do? Am I going to have enough? Can I stop working? That's probably the thing. And the thing I think that people don't appreciate and realize enough is that it's a super scary thing to retire. It's a really difficult thing psychologically, because the way I describe it is you go from a situation in your life where, you know what, you turn up at this place, call work, you rock up and you get money landing in your bank account every week or fortnight or every month, right? It's kind of easy. You just got to be there, do what you're meant to do.
That's your routine, right?
Yeah, yeah. But you've also got full control. You turn up, you do your job, and the money's there, right? Whereas the shift into retirement, it's you now have to rely on this bucket of stuff called investments or super, or rely on this thing which is somewhat uncontrollable. It is uncontrollable and it's even detached from us in a sense. And you just have to hope that that can deliver that money in your bank account so that you can do the things you want to do. It's quite unnerving. It takes time to get used to and get comfortable with that. And we find that we spend a lot of time with our clients talking to them about that and telling them this is going to be hard, this is going to be scary, this is how it's going to feel, this is how we're going to make that transition as best as possible. And not just make sure you've got enough money, but make sure that you know that, not that we can create certainty, but create the frameworks to make sure that you're making the right decisions so you can continue to have the things that you want, or at least have confidence knowing what you can and what you can't have.
I think it's kind of like when you're trying to parent a child as well. You don't ever want to say, no, you can't have that because we can't afford it. So in retirement, you never want to say, no, we're not doing that because we can't afford it. You want to say, no, we're not doing it because I don't feel like it, or we're doing something else instead. You don't want to get to that point. Well, people are scared that they will not be able to live the life that they want, right? But I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, it's all about mindset. So I find that when I was looking at retirement planning, people really had trouble shifting their mindset from, I've got to save for retirement, I've got to, do all these things, I'm paying down my mortgage, I'm saving for a holiday, I'm doing this. And then when they move into retirement, that money was there to use, and now they actually have to use it, which is really difficult. And I find that a lot of the time they were still in a saving mindset. So they might have their regular income coming and they'll be like, but I need to put X amount away each month or each fortnight for my holiday in X amount of years or whatever. And you're like, well, you don't, because you have the bucket of money that's saving. You don't have to have that mentality now. Yes, it's just all about changing their mindset of how they've been living their life for this whole amount of time, preserving money, and now it actually needs to be spent. That can be really challenging.
Yeah, because I guess that connects back to habits, behaviors as well, the mindset, just the way we're used to doing what we're doing, and without that proactive or intentional decision to change that mindset, you end up not actually doing what's going to be best for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's huge. Okay, cool. So
the other thing, sorry, Gemma, the other thing with that as well is that people have assumptions around what they should do. Like, oh, well, again, while you're working, you're accumulating, right? And again, that mindset, it's hard to get out of that. It's like, but I don't want to spend down my money. I want to see it growing, or I don't want to, but again, when you have those discussions around why and what your values are, what is your purpose? What is it for? Is your purpose to die with $1 million in the bank? That's not an actual thing you want. Like, why do you want that?
Yeah, and why do you have to preserve your capital? Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, what's the long-term goal? It's okay to spend this money.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So what would you think is something that people should consider on the lead up to retirement, but often don't, like not even on their radar, something that might, surprise them that they should be doing or should be considering?
Good question. I mean, there's the technical things around tax planning strategy, investment structures, things like that. But again, I think when it comes to us humans, it's more around behavioral and psychological things. So I think the danger, and some people do it well, but probably more need to do it better. And I don't know what the percentages are, but we know that mental health is a massive issue generally. But what's not spoken about as much is mental health and depression that older people suffer. And I think the classic example is older men in particular who define themselves by their jobs, and
Like the
they suddenly,
purpose. Yeah.
yeah, they think they want to play golf every day. But again, as Barry Lavallee says, if you don't play golf every day now, what makes you think you're going to want to play golf every day for the next 30 years? So I think what people definitely don't think about is, what do I really want to do when I can do anything? And actually planning what you're going to do in retirement, planning your time. People that plan trips and things like that do a good job of it, but you talk to so many people and they're like, oh, I just sit around at home, watch TV.
Yeah.
There's a real missed opportunity. It's this thing that people have been looking forward to for 50 years.
And I think
Right?
that's why a lot of people don't retire when they have the financial capacity too, because they're literally thinking, what am I going to do other than sit around? And, like they maybe don't have hobbies, or they've been too busy working to build the life that they love, a life that they want to retire to. So yeah, unless you've done the work to look at, well, when I've got this free time, what do I want to do with it? And how do I want to spend my days? If you haven't worked towards knowing yourself and knowing what you want of that transition is going to be even harder.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
One of the questions that we got in the chat is, do you get clients that want to unretire to some degree? So I'll talk about my experience. So I used to work for a super fund that used to have lots of Queensland government employees, like lots of teachers, for example. You can probably all work out who that was. So a lot of the teachers that would retire, they'd worked, 40 odd years full-time, teaching was their passion, but they were just burnt out. They would retire, but then within a few months, it would be really common that they would do like supply work. So they would just be put on a roster that if a teacher calls in sick, they'd do a day here or there. And they just loved it. And the pay is so good too. But because they had retired, they've got access to their super, they can do their trips, they're living their life. And then, here's $400, $500 for doing one day a week's work, and they can say no to it. So they loved like that flexibility. So they weren't unretiring like a lot of people did during COVID to actually go back to employment. They were just like, I'd love to do this. And some other people would volunteer, at your local op shop or whatever it is, or school or something. So yeah, I found that people still would like to dip their toe into something, but they wanted to know that they could be retired. What do you think?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think it comes back to it's often that people retire and then go, now what should I do? And they try and figure it out. In the example you gave, it's awesome that these people had an opportunity to do that. A lot of people don't have that structure where they can go and do that. And so then they start looking for things. It's about purpose and being productive. That's what, as humans, we want to be doing something. We want to be purposeful. We want to be achieving something. We want to keep learning. So if people want to go back to school and study, or if they want to do volunteer work, that's the beauty about it. I think if you can get yourself into that financial position where you have the option of whether you're relying on money or not, then you can have full choice to start doing something that really does connect with your purpose. If people can do that, some struggle with it. And that's where having a good coach or someone they can talk to, or a men's group or a women's group or a retirement, U3A, whatever it is, where you can talk about things like, what is it that you guys are doing? Where do you find your passion? Like talking to other people, it can help reignite something that is so important.
Have that connection. Yeah. And I think this shows you the importance of like planning really far in advance. So you're in a position that when you do retire, if you wanted to go back to work, you were making that decision because it was fulfilling for you, not because it was a financial decision. So yeah, the key is planning as far in ahead as in advance as you can, so that you're in a really strong position that whatever choices you make, they're because they align with your goals and your values, not because of a financial element.
What do you think about that, actually? I mean, I do hear that some advisors, coaches, people in the finance industry say, don't worry about retirement. That's too far away. Just figure out your situation now. Whereas my view is, yeah, it's a guess about the future. And sometimes those people say, well, you can't predict it. It's too far away. Whereas I'm like, well, just guess about it and at least move in the right direction with purpose and intentionality. Yes, it's going to be different, but you can adjust along the way. Some people say, oh, there's no point, just worry about the next 5 years or the next 10 years.
Yes, and that's actually, I had a note on there. So that's a bias that you can kind of talk about. So I would get clients come in and I'd be like, you're going to run out of money. You can't spend at this degree. You can't keep this lifestyle up. And they'd be like, nah, it's all good. I'm going to die by 70 because my parents did, or something. And they have this bias. And you're like, yeah, but what if you don't? What if you don't? And then you're on Centrelink, which what's 26 grand a year or something. So it's like, yeah, you can absolutely have that mindset. But what if? So for younger people that are planning for retirement, they're probably not, right? They're focused on their home loan and things. I think as young as possible, you should be sorting out your super. It'll be probably one of your biggest assets, if not the biggest, if you're under 37. I think look at it, sort it, maybe don't put extra in or focus and go, I need to actually plan for my retirement. But if you've got the right super fund, you know your contributions are going in, you kind of know it's on the right trajectory, then you can focus on the other things that are important and just have those check-ins. But I don't think you should ever be head in the sand, I'm going to worry about that 5 years out from my retirement, because you just don't have the time frame to look at it. I'd rather be like, yes, that's a goal. It's not my focus right now, but I want to know that it's on the rails to tick that goal and I don't have to do too much. So yeah, it doesn't need to be your main focus, but you need to know that it's on track regardless, because that goal is coming for majority of us. And you want to be around for it, right? You want to enjoy it.
Yeah, you said, that person that says, I'm going to die at 70 anyway. It's at least valuable to go, okay, if you do go past 70, then are you comfortable to own that decision that you're going to live off the 26,000 or whatever? And if they say yes, then all good. But if they go, oh, no way, then you're right. You've got to challenge them. Even with the younger clients, I think you're right. Like, you at least have to look at it. Do the minimum, or do the things that are going to, because there are other things like mortgage and things like that. But yeah, I think you're right. You do have to look at it, because sometimes you might make different decisions as to, do you upgrade your home or not, if it means I can retire early, or if I can not have to work, be burdened by something or not, how am I directing my money? At least get that view, that big picture in the future. Like, I know for myself, I'd look at, not actively think about retirement, but at least go, if these things happen, if I work for this long and blah, 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 earn income and spend this much, am I going to have enough?
Yeah, and it's so hard to think about, because everybody has like the present bias. We only focus on what impacts us today and not in the future. But what I like to talk to people about is, like, imagine if you could talk to your 18 or 20 or 30-year-old self and be like, hey, buy an investment property, or hey, chuck $1,000 in, or just say something to them. And you just be like, oh, thank you so much for doing that, right? Well, that's like, we've got the opportunity right now to be those people for our future self. So don't put your head in the sands that your future self has to sit there 5 years out from retirement going, I wish that person, why didn't they put $20 a week in? So try to imagine yourself as two different people. And because it's so hard to understand or imagine who we're going to be in the future, do it the reverse way. Because I know who I was at 18 and I had money to put away and I could have done all these things and I didn't.
That's a great example. It's a bit scary thinking about, how old I am and thinking about my younger self.
I saw a meme the other day and it was like, I wish I had been investing instead of learning to walk when I was 3, or something like that.
Yeah. But how often do you talk to people that are retiring, and then you go through the exercise and it's the first time they've really done any planning, they're going, geez, I wish we were thinking about this stuff 20 years ago. So for the 40-year-olds, when you're 60, when you're 70, you're going to be going, geez, I wish we at least thought about this, because we might have done things differently.
Exactly. And the earlier that you do it, the less you have to do. You can just pull a few levers. You can do a little bit. But when you're getting close to retirement, like if you've paid off your loan and then you go, right, now I'm going to boost my super, you're putting so much money in. You're sacrificing so much of your lifestyle. Whereas the earlier that you look at your fees, look at making a small contribution that you don't notice, the compounding impact of that does all the hard work for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was going to say, what are your 3 tips? Oh, well, we've kind of already gone through this. So my tips were going to be, like, when preparing for retirement, plan as early as possible, which we've gone through. My other one would be to like work on all the foundational stuff. So if you're not good with managing money right now while you've got a salary, you don't have a budget, you don't know what you spend, it doesn't have to be a tight budget, right? But you don't know what you spend, you don't know what you live
At
on.
least know it, right?
You need to know that stuff. And don't, like, as a financial advisor, I'd see people going, oh yeah, no, we can live off 60 grand a year. And I'm like, cool, well, right now you don't have a mortgage, you have a net income of 150 together. Where does it all go? And they're like, oh, we won't spend like that in retirement. I'm like, well, you probably will, because you're going to be the same people next year, right? Like, chances are it's going to be pretty close. So I would say, get all your foundational stuff right. Like, work out how you do your budget, work out how you do your spending, how you got your bank accounts. Like, you can't wait till retirement to do all that stuff, because you're already on such a curve with all the other learnings, about your day, your lifestyle. So that would be the other one that I would recommend.
Yeah, awesome. I'll go a bit more technical since you've gone with the smart foundational things. So totally agree with you. To give you a couple of different things, I'd go, investments are complicated and they're hard to understand, and there's so much rubbish out there in terms of the media and socials and what friends and family and people talk about. So
lots of scary stories.
And you can stuff it up, right? So I think getting that right, making sure that you're getting that right is important, because it's not the be all and end all, but if you stuff that up, then you can forget about everything else. The second one is that, and this is a bit geeky, but there are some cool strategies that you can do, particularly once you hit that.
I was going to ask you, what are your favorite strategies?
Yeah, the favorite one for me is that what most people don't realize is the inheritance tax with super, right? So if you die and your money passes to your adult children, you lose 17% of it, right? So there are some strategies that can be executed which can work around a lot of that tax. So if you're going to retire with $1 million, that's $170,000 that you can save in tax by doing it. But if you don't do it early enough and you don't plan for it, you don't do it properly, and it is quite technical and complicated.
Strategy is not something that you can do yourself, right? Like, it is so complicated. Alexi and I were talking about it in the last episode as well, because we were talking about the great the wealth transfer and how you might be inheriting or you might be passing on money, and how you can structure that differently. So the contribution strategy used to be one of my favorites as well. But as we highlighted last week, is that's not something that most people can identify going, hey, I'm eligible to do this now. It's if you're dealing with an advisor, there's a very small window of when you can do that kind of stuff. And so you need to be talking to a planner like, 5 years out, going, right, what do we need to do now? Then maybe you check in yearly, or if it's every couple of years, or just set out these touch points, because there's only so many points that you can actually pull the trigger on these really amazing strategies that are going to impact you, but also, who potentially will inherit this money.
Yeah, and not all advisors are good at that stuff, and not all advisors do it because it takes a lot of work. So, taking our own responsibility for our affairs, raise it with your advisor. Of course, you'd hope that your advisor is being proactive about it, but if they're not, make sure you ask them about it. And if they're not executing it for you, you got to, push back on that, because it is tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. The other one that I geeked out on when I was doing retirement planning is a Centrelink strategy. So when you have like an age gap between clients, so they may not be eligible for Centrelink based on their assets, but there's a period that they are, and that you can do a strategy around that. So I used to love that one as well. Pretty much anything technical that you can really get into the figures, I absolutely love.
And that's hard as well. That's hard to do, and most people can't do it themselves. It takes a fair bit of...
you wouldn't, like, the value versus the cost that you would pay an advisor is just absolutely, through the roof.
Yeah. And with those strategies, if you don't do them correctly, it can actually cost you more money if you stuff it up.
So it might be that you have a financial advisor at different points in your life, and then when you're getting to retirement, potentially the few years, it might not be that you need an ongoing advisor every single year, but maybe in the years leading up to retirement you do, because you need the support and the technical side of it, but also the helping you with the foundations and the mindset. And then a few years into retirement, while you get comfortable, and then maybe you're okay for a while. It's not that you have an advisor the whole period, but there's just so much value around that retirement space that people get a lot out of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as you said, just think about it. Even if you haven't planned early, close to retirement, plan before you retire, because again, you would have seen that people come and they say, oh, what should I do now? And it's kind of like, it's too late. There's not much we can do. There's all the stuff we could have done. So
Yeah. My final tip that I was going to say, and I'll see if you agree with this, is I say to clients, try before you buy, because people come in and they're like, right, we're buying this $150,000 caravan. We've never been caravanners, but we know that that will be that in retirement. I'm like, stop, go hire one, hire a couple, see if you like the layout, do all that first. Like, you might hate caravanning, right? And I do that with downsizing as well. So say I had a client that had a family, like not a farm, but like property. They didn't live any close to their neighbors and stuff. And they were 60 and they're like, we're downsizing into a unit. It's like, how do you feel about that? Have you ever lived in a unit? You know, like, go and rent one. Go rent one for 6 months or something before you sell your house, because they're capable of living in the one still, and they didn't need to financially. They just thought, well, that's what everybody else is doing. So I'm like, go stay in one, see if you like it. You know, rent out your house for a year. Probably not going to cause tax issues if you do it right, but why commit to that if that might not be what you actually want? And again, you could do that with reducing your hours. Like, why work a 40-hour week for 40 years, not knowing your lifestyle or what you want in retirement, just to retire on a specific day? You know, drop a day a week if you can, or take some long service leave and start imagining what retirement will be. So yeah, I talk to people about, and that's, you know, mindset and goals and things is again, but I find that people are very rigid in, oh, this is what other people are doing, this is what I have to do. And I think you can try before you buy in a lot of instances.
I agree 1%, 100%. And it's very difficult for people to do, because people go, well, that's what I want to do and I'll be fine, or that's what so-and-so is doing, so I can do it. But yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, 100%. My parents, for example, have just downsized. Downsizing took a while to buy the house they want. And the hardest thing that I challenge them with is, you don't know what you're going to want to, where you're going to want to live. You know, you're living in the house that me and my brothers grew up in and all that sort of thing. Like, how do you know what you're going to like and what you're not going to like? Even the suburb or the area, you know?
Yeah.
So I convinced them to rent, and they rented for a bit, got used to a few things, and go, yep, this is what we like, this is what we don't like. So when we buy that house, we know what it is. And the thing that people don't think about is the costs of getting it wrong.
Exactly, because this is a pushback I got when I said to some people about renting for a year. They're like, that's dead money. I'm like, no, it's an investment in your future, because you're going to make this big decision on selling and your happiness. And, you know, there's always a trade-off with any decision you make, you know, in life, but especially in finance. There's a trade-off, and sometimes the value isn't in the money, right? It's in the other aspects.
Yeah, and again, we've got to challenge the conventional wisdom. Oh, renting's dead money. Well, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's all those misconceptions, and what works for you might not work for somebody else. But, you know, if people are thinking about retiring and not knowing where to go to, a financial advisor, a money coach, you know, there's lots of information out there, but getting it right and getting the right advice specific to you, as you said, like, it's costly to make mistakes at this point in your life when you're looking at retirement. You really can't afford to. So getting the advice and getting it right the first time is really key.
Well, I heard this from another person. They say, you only got one shot at it. So it's not the first time. You've only got one shot at getting retirement right. Don't mess it up. It's not like your first job.
That's exactly right. You don't have time on your side to correct it. So get advice, do it right, and then you are setting yourself up for success, you know, with your mental health and your outlook and how you're going to manage your money, but also how your money is going to fund your lifestyle. This was lots of fun talking about. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome, Gemma.
Thanks for filling in for Lexi while she's gallivanting around the ocean.
Yeah, we all can't be that lucky, but someone's got to do the...
Someone's got to do it, hey? But yeah, we'll get you on again and we'll do another topic. We'll pick your brain about your geek out strategy. Cool. All right, see you later. Bye.
Bye.